Hello everyone. We are honoured to welcome Paule Constable, a multi-award-winning lighting designer and sustainability campaigner. Paule is Associate Director of the National Theatre, Associate of the Lyric Hammersmith, and for Matthew Bourne's New Adventures. Earlier this year, Paule received a special award from the Critics' Circle to acknowledge her contribution to theatre. But with a passion for change and a more sustainable approach to living and working, Paule has become a powerful influence within the theatre and lighting design industries. Design industries. Today's industries continue to interested in ensuring that those industries continue to thrive. But we must acknowledge that the way we work will have to change. Paule believes the key to making the theatre industry a better place for working and living in is to choose to care and to choose to take responsibility for our actions. Paule, welcome. Thank you for joining us and sharing with us your vision. I'll hand it over to you.
Gorgeous. Thank you, Jess. Morning, everyone. I'm just going to say a few things. That introduction makes me feel far more impressive than I am, but I'm an amateur and I always think that's kind of an interesting place to be, but we are all essentially that, but it doesn't mean that we're not empowered to make change happen. As Jess said, I'm a lighting designer. It's funny that I work directly with a resource that we so often take for granted, and that in so many ways can be seen to be symbolic of a kind of profligacy that is part of so much of contemporary life. We watch TV or even a simple quiz show and there are lights everywhere. What are they doing? Are they just there to demonstrate a wealth and a power, a lack of care, a society that doesn't have to account for actions, one that can use as it wants to? I've been engaged with this conversation for years, ever since I took to London on a rock hopper mountain bike as a student in the 80s. In those pre-email days, the front of every queue at the traffic lights was an array of Honda 400s and bicycles, delivering everything as quickly as we could around the city. We were the rats, but by stepping off the treadmill of both car driving and public transport, we were stepping into another tribe. And that tribe was the early eco-warriors. We cycled through the West End, published magazines like Moving Target, and pulled together because back then we had no voice. Cyclists have a right to move, reclaim the streets. It was the early days and we were pushing for change. But if you choose to care, are you supposed to leave that caring self at stage door as you walk into your place of work? The apparent contradiction between my professional self and my personal self led me to start engaging with the idea of systemic change in this industry. It's been slow work, starting with buildings, measuring, accounting, always scared to engage with the artists who were so often saying that creative compromise isn't possible, that anything should be okay in the name of art. Where to start? It feels too big. What do we do? Who are our fellow travellers? But within this moment, as we've all been forced to think about many things in a different way, there does feel like a glimpse of hope that change is possible. In fact, change is, of course, necessary. My challenge to you is about choices. And the first thing is to choose to care. Step into the space, take the space, and define yourself as an arts worker who has this as a central concern. We can all claim to be victims of circumstance, that we work in places where our voices aren't heard, but that isn't good enough anymore. Challenge yourself and the others around you. The interesting thing about doing this is that in your head above the parapet, people are educated and aware enough now to join, to feel relief in someone else talking about this. It becomes empowering to create a community around a project who hold this as a central concern. If we all take hands and agree that this is important, then we're stronger. We can only know that we are stronger by sharing this. So do it, step in and tell people you're doing that. Because people are scared more than anything else. They don't want to engage because it feels vast, overwhelming, punitive. It feels like a space full of denial, prohibition, and the wearing of hair shirts. But collectively, it can be liberating. It can stop you leaving the part of you who is concerned behind. And then make it affect everything you do, every conversation you have. It can become the lens through which you see what you do. It defines how you work, your process, your work itself. Keep asking yourself and others the questions. Don't wait to be told, to be measured, to be punished. Live inside the space of learning. It's what we as artists should do. We need to challenge companies, not them to police us. And we gain a new creative perspective. So shift your values. Bigger is not better. Louder is not better. Let's concentrate on people, not stuff. And let's make the future better. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you, Paule. Wow, so much to think about. But I've got so many questions for you as well to follow that. I think one of the things which is really interesting is freelancers make theatre work, which actually encapsulates a lot of what you've just spoken about. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you set that up, why you set that up, and what is the mission for that organisation?
So freelancers make theatre work. It wasn't only me, it was a group of us in conversation realising that quite early on in the pandemic, as it sort of transpired that this was going to be going on for a long time, we were realising that lots of companies and buildings were having conversations, but nobody was talking to us. And we went to the London Theatre Consortium and asked if they could engage with their kind of regular freelancers just to start communication flowing, really. And each theatre in London sort of had a meeting with their freelance, cohort. And then from those meetings, about their kind of fears and woes and money worries and all sorts of things. But feeling how disempowered they were feeling. And one of us volunteered in each one of those meetings, and we came together, and very rapidly it became apparent that this feeling was UK-wide, industry-wide, and that somehow we needed to create somewhere where information can be fed through, where people could come to find out what was going on, where people could express their doubts and fears, where we could start trying to lobby for change. Even simple things like there was no data around the freelancers in the industry. Nobody understands who we are. The unions don't represent all of us. The Arts Council don't understand who we are. It's so an ecosystem is such a useful word to talk about how we make theatre and how, we are threatened, as so many ecosystems are. And by joining together, we will become stronger. So, I hope that we're trying to create a sort of platform for that communication to be better. But it's hard. It's really, really hard. But it's the future. Let's hope.
There's some fantastic stats actually that you've got on the website there. Freelancers make theatres work, which is really worth having a look at, because it obviously talks about the value of the arts in terms of the number of jobs, also how it contributes to the economy. But who else are you appealing to with Freelancers Make Theatres Work? Who is it that you're calling to recognise the value of this industry?
The lobbying goes in many directions, obviously to government, to DCMS, to central government and to Treasury, because I think there's a real misunderstanding about what the theatre industry, the live performing arts need in order to happen. But also we have to lobby and educate within our own industry. Even the Arts Council don't reach stage managers, makers, milliners, technicians. There's such a small number of people that the recognised mechanisms and funding bodies reach, and yet the kind of the iceberg of what it takes to make work, as we all know, is vast, and it's not London centric. And it needs to be open to all. So we're educating government, we're educating the opposition, we hope, we're educating our own industry. And also we're talking to buildings and companies and saying, please don't forget us. There's a huge problem with the Cultural Renewal Fund, the Cultural Recovery Fund, that of course those funds are aimed at essentially mothballing. And we're trying to encourage companies to make work and involve freelancers, because that's the only way that we can get any financial support to this sector. Gets back on its feet. There's 200,000 people who have been with nothing. So they're the people who make the work. And we're all going to, it's terrifying to think how we're going to get the lifeboats that we can create that can get as many people as possible from here to when we start making again. But they are going to be lifeboats.
I think something else that it's really interesting from having spoken to you is about your contribution to ensuring that environmental issues are now a core value at the National Theatre. So I'm just wondering, for the rest of us who are part of an organisation, how can others do the same within their own organisation and sector to make environmental issues a core?
There's a really interesting debate around sustainability within buildings and companies. And the first thing I would say is that it needs to happen through the whole of the building. You need a core sample that goes through the building from top to bottom, and you need the bottom to feed up and the top to feed down for it to make any change happen. The big thing that I've really gone on about at the National is we have to be willing to fail. There's nothing bad in failing. I think so often in the sustainability conversation, our fear of not being able to attain the levels that we agree to, the carbon neutrality that we want to by such and such a time, stops us doing anything. And actually, just inactivity is not an option. And also, there's something really glorious in not making it. We still learn from not succeeding. So it's not a question of dropping what our aspiration is. It's make our aspiration huge and then be honest about what our learning is, even in our failure. So it's just it's like so much around value and sustainability, isn't it? It's altering the metric. It's not a competition. And every step we go, we have to learn and be as transparent as we possibly can about what we do learn.
Yeah, and I love that, the interactivity, action, not to be active is not an option. That we have to do this. We have to be thinking about it. But as artists, and like I've heard you talk before, that's central to not only our skills, but our role.
It's what we do.
We are creative thinkers. We are in a creative industry, and we're used to working to challenges and coming up with new ways of doing things.
I think that's really important, that it's a creative space to step into. It is properly creative. It implies a rigor and a care, and it's another value that you instill in your work. But that's a creative challenge, and creative doesn't have to be punitive. It can be hugely exciting and different, and change is important.
I think there's so much to take from that, Paule, and we are running out of time. But my last question was, how do you remain positive about the future of our sector?
How do I remain positive? Because I think change is possible, and because I think the simple act of shared storytelling remains important. It's interesting to see how much everybody's missing it, those kind of collective shared experiences. It's not to the government, but to many of the rest of us and the public, it's really reinforced the value of that. We're missing each other. We're missing seeing and experiencing things together. And we can do that in really simple forms. We've shifted away from opulence, haven't we, through the pandemic? It's like life has become smaller. So let's just start in a kind of delicate and generous way, sharing stories again, and not feeling that it needs stuff to do that. It needs people and heart and belief, and then we can move forward.
I think that's a great way to end our session. But thank you so much for joining us, Paule, for your wise words and thoughts. So we'll take those with us for the rest of the day, and I'm sure we'll be commenting them in the discussion. So join us for that at midday. And next up, we do have Planetfall, which is Pentabus's introduction to a new piece by Tom Foley. So join us for that, Paule, if you can.
Brilliant. Thank you.